Hello, my name is Katerina and you are listening to Sci-Lang Podcast. I'm here today with my guest Cesco Reale, a lecturer in mathematics at EHL, University of Hotel Management in Lausanne in Switzerland. However, this is not the only place where he is active, as he also gives a PhD course about mathematics and society at D'Annunzio University in Italy. A warm welcome to you, Cesco.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
So, my first question to you is how does a lecturer in mathematics and a game player like you to benefit from speaking multiple languages when it comes to professional sphere?
Well, first of all, as a mathematics teacher or professor, particularly at EHL, now I have many students from different um, cultures and languages, and it's a very international environment. And so, as you can imagine, often I can use other languages to better explain concept, or also even just to have a more direct interaction with people. This is something that is true not only in teaching but in any human aspect. When you speak multiple languages and you can talk directly to the person in his mother tongue or in an uncommon language, this is particularly surprising and creates already a connection. And I have to say, not only mother tongue, because sometimes you find out that you speak Chinese you have an uncommon language or an unusual language or that is in common with another person. And this also creates a link. So in this sense, I can benefit from speaking multiple languages also in teaching mathematics.
Okay, so you have already said that you are using multiple languages when teaching, but I think it must be also because this university is based in Switzerland, which is like a country of multiple languages. So I can imagine that even the personal life there must be like a mix of those languages, which brings my question, what languages do you actually speak? If you can give us an overview.
Yeah, okay. Well, I speak many languages. I speak, let's say, all the 10 most spoken Latin languages, including Latin, uh, plus some other Russian, Chinese, German, Esperanto, Greek, and some more.
Okay, that's like a very broad palette of languages. And when you actually mentioned the Latin, the question which I have now in my mind is how much is Latin or other languages used in mathematics?
In mathematics, I would say it's used in the history of mathematics because, as you can imagine, when there are people studying, for example, ancient mathematics, history of mathematics, there are some texts in Latin. For example, I often cite the De Institutione Arithmetica from Boetius in Latin. I cite it often because I studied particularly a game, and now we go also to games, that was invented in the 11th century. It is a game that is called Rhythmomachia. It's a sort of chess with numbers, in which the pieces are numbers. And so you have to perform mathematical operations in order to capture pieces. And it was invented as a didactical game, and it was based on the mathematics of the time that was so based mainly on the De Institutione Arithmetica from Boetius. And so, of course, this is in Latin. So I used this game in one of my exhibitions. I created several exhibitions about mathematics, and one of them is mathematics and games. And I show with posters and with videos and with games several ancient games. And so among them there is Rhythmomachia. So people learn something about the culture, the anthropological sides and historical sides of these games. Then they play, and then they can go deeper and understand some mathematics that can be learned through these games, or can be even used to play well these games.
So, out of my curiosity, when these exhibitions are related to Latin, in what languages do you usually hold those? Or do you offer multiple
Oh,
languages? Or
so the exhibitions are my exhibitions. The posters are written in Italian, French, sometimes English. But then when I give talks, I gave talks in several languages. But in Latin, I also gave talks in Latin festivals or Latin academies, like in Accademia Vivarium Novum in Rome, or in Settimana Latina in Marburg in Germany. So I gave some talks about Roman games, for example, and so not strictly speaking, not about mathematics, but about games.
okay.
And also in the Latein Tag, it's a Latin day, let's say, in Switzerland. I also gave some talks in multiple languages, including Latin. And well, you can find them actually in my YouTube channel. The last one is from last October, was exactly about.
And this is really interesting, especially considering that Latin is being considered like a dead language, whereas mathematics is still ongoing. So it's, to me, it's interesting that these two are still um, so much related when one of them is barely used, or barely used when it comes to being spoken, because we still know that in medicine, or as we just discussed in mathematics, it's used. Um, and yeah, the other one is still like ongoing and bringing new theories. So this is
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it is used by mathematicians. I'm not aware of that. I don't think so. But for sure, there are mathematicians, and I know some of them, that study the history of mathematics and so study Latin books in about mathematics, ancient books in Latin.
so. Was your initial aim to learn Latin to be able to read the original works in mathematics? Or
No, I studied Latin at in the high school. I studied Latin and ancient Greek, um, and so I mean I just chose to do this path, this high school. In Italian, it's called Liceo Classico, classical high school, let's say. And so I studied those languages, and of course we never spoke them because it's very rare to find professors that teach this direct method. Then when I was at the university, I met a Swiss, by the way, from Bern, a Swiss student that was there in Erasmus in Pisa, and he spoke Latin because he studied classical languages at the university, so ancient languages and literatures. And then I was amazed that he could speak Latin. I never thought that there were people speaking Latin. And so we created a group of few passionate people that wanted to try to speak with him. And so that's how I started speaking Latin, just for the pleasure of saying, okay, I studied many years this language. Now at the time I was already able to speak several languages, and so I said, why not trying speaking this language that is inside myself, but I never tried to to speak it out. So that's how I started. It was not a specific aim, just the pleasure of trying it with people that already were able to speak it.
And this is very impressive. The thing that it just motivated you and got you to the level when you are actually already able to speak it. Then one question which I have in my mind is, do you actually think there is anything like a talent for learning languages, or is it just the thing that if you try hard, you can manage to learn any language? Because, as you just said, you have learned a language which almost no one is able to speak, and you can speak multiple other languages. So, would you consider yourself to be having like a talent for language learning, or what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, this is a classical question, and I think that there is a quite a big consensus among the experts on that subject. The talent is a small part, quite small part, at least in languages. In mathematics, it's probably more important, the percentage of talent, let's say, the importance of the talent. But particularly in languages and in many other things, the talent, I would say it's very small part. It's present, but it's a very small part. And the biggest part are motivation, method, and opportunities. And I think there is a very clear answer on the subject that is provided by the history, and we go back to games here, by the history of the Polgar sisters that are the most famous, among the most famous chess players, female chess players. And the history is quite astonishing, because in the 60s in Hungary, Polgar Laszlo, so Laszlo is the name, Polgar is the surname, studied the education of geniuses. And he so studied, for example, Mozart, Michelangelo, and so on. Okay, and he came up saying that at the end of his studies, he said, I have, let's say, the recipe to create geniuses, or even better, happy geniuses, out of any healthy child. And he said it, and he did it. So he had a wife that accepted the challenge. They had 3 daughters, and the first of them discovered chess and get a strong passion in it at 4 years old, so very young. Then the other 2, by emulation, also tried, and so they decided to focus the education on chess, doing at the same time also sport and all the other things, preparing them at home during the communist period. So it was very tough, because they had many problems also with the state concerning this topic. And finally, they learned 7 languages, including Esperanto, by the way. And they were very, very good at chess, so good that the first sister was 4 times world champion, female champion. The second was the first girl to win an international chess tournament with chess masters, male chess masters. And the third one was so strong that she never competed against females she always competed in the open tournament, so mainly dominated by men. So I think this is a great story that shows how education is a key, knowing how to motivate children and how to understand their interest. And so method and motivation are much bigger impact than talent. And I think we can say the same in languages.
Curiosity, you mentioned that those girls were attending like a male competitions.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a big difference of thinking, or do you think that it's like a big difference of thinking of a female and a man in chess? And if so, why is it caused? Or should maybe female and men be educated different as it is in some countries that they are split for education?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the difference is mainly a cultural difference. From a neurological point of view, science says that there are no major differences in, in the human brain. So there is no evidence for which men or women should be better in chess, for example. But of course, there are historical reasons for which the motivation can be very different, because historically girls were not used to have strong competition, to learn science, to learn,
Mm-hmm.
for historical reasons, most of players were and still are men. Statistically, there are more. If you go to a game festival, normally there are statistically more men than women. And so this is, of course, much now it's much more equilibrated than 100 years ago, but there is still an influence that is fading out, but is still present. So it's, I would say, just cultural, historical difference.
Okay, and when you consider the culture difference, do you think that the language plays a role when it comes to chess? So I don't know if you have ever played against. You probably must have different people from different countries, which made you to speak to them before the match in different languages. Did it impact your thinking during the match, or do you think always in your mother tongue when playing chess? Or
No, in playing, no, I wouldn't say that. Not in playing chess or in playing. Of course, if we play language games, yes, but no, I wouldn't. I don't. I wouldn't have any example of that. So I don't think that that would impact my playing style in playing chess, for example.
okay, and the second question I had was related to the Esperanto, which you mentioned talking about this family. And my question is, do you think Esperanto has a broad use in mathematics? And if so, can you give us some examples, please?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this I think is the central topic of the Silang Post podcast, so the interaction between science and languages. And yes, I one of the talks that you can find in my YouTube channel, and it's one of also of the talk that I'm asked the most, because it's the most rare, probably the most unusual, is relationships between languages and mathematics, Esperanto and beyond. And I show these connections. I'll talk about them in a minute. And Esperanto is one of the best examples to show these connections because it was created in a very logical way. It's not the only one. There are also other planned languages that are very logical, but Esperanto is just the one that I know the best. Is the only one, the only planned language that I speak. I have studied a few more, but I don't. I do some examples from other languages, other planned languages, but I don't speak them. So first of all, the connection between languages and mathematics, it's I want to start with a quotation by Galilei that said in Il Saggiatore, said that mathematics is the language in which God wrote the universe. So it's not exactly that, the quotation, but I just adjusted a little bit to summarize. And so first of all, we could say that mathematics itself is a universal language. And instead, there are many, theorems like the famous Pythagoras theorem that was discovered independently in China and in Europe, and so in different cultures. So in that sense, we can say, I think that this sentence by Galilei is quite powerful and meaningful. Then coming to mathematics in languages, the examples that I give are, for example, the concept of biunivocity that I'm going to explain in a minute. In mathematical terms, it's called bijectivity. And so let's imagine 10 couples, like husband and wife. Let's talk about a monogamous environment where each husband can have only one wife and vice versa. Now, we can imagine that we have these 10 couples in a room, and we can imagine that we connect, let's say, with a wire, each husband to his wife and vice versa. Okay, so this would be a biunivocal connection. Okay, to each husband corresponds one wife and only one wife, and vice versa. To each wife corresponds one husband and only one husband. Okay, so this is the mathematical concept of biunivocity. Now, this concept is a very useful concept in mathematics, but it is very useful also in linguistics. For example, if you go to my website, cescoreale.com/lingue, lingue means languages in Italian, you will find a paper about this topic, bijectivity in languages. And in this paper, I analyze a method that I invented to calculate, to measure the degree of phonematic transparency of a language. What do I mean by that? We can apply this concept of biunivocity to, for example, to phonetics. Let's take the example of Esperanto. In Esperanto, you have 28 letters and 28 phonemes. So to each letter corresponds exactly one phoneme, so one sound, let's say, and to each phoneme corresponds exactly one letter. And so it is very easy to, if you have to learn how to read Esperanto, it is very easy because it's very regular, okay? And it is, let's say, very logical, very mathematical. Instead, if you go to Italian or Spanish, so in Esperanto, if you measure this degree, I'm not going to the details, you can go to the paper if you want, but if you go to measure this degree, it's 100%. Instead, if you go to analyze Spanish or Italian, that are considered very regular among natural languages, very regular pronunciation, this percentage decreases to about 84, 85%. Because there are some irregularities. For example, in Italian, the sound k can be expressed with a q or with a ch or with a c alone, etc. And vice versa, the letter G can be pronounced G or J or Ñ, if followed by the N, and so on. So this regularity is decreased in Spanish and in Italian. Then, if you go to French, French is much more irregular, and this percentage decreases to 57%. And not even to speak about English, this is completely irregular and very, very difficult from the phonetical point of view. So this concept of bijectivity applied to phonetic can allow you to understand how you can create something easier like Esperanto, but also like the International Phonetic Alphabet. The idea of the International Phonetic Alphabet is exactly to have a biunivocal relationship between sounds and symbols, phonetic symbols, in order to be able to represent a certain sound that may be present in different languages by the same symbol.
I have to say I've never heard about this, but it's definitely like a great message to the listeners. And did you say you are also leading lectures on this on your YouTube channel? Or
Yes, yes, yeah. There are a couple of them about this topic.
okay,
Not necessarily in English. I don't remember, but you can check it out.
okay, great. I will definitely have a look on this and might attach the link if you don't mind to our episode,
Sure.
so our listeners can have a look. Yeah, I think we are almost running to the end of the podcast, but before we finish, I definitely need to ask you another question, and that's related to a project of which you are a founder. If I'm saying right, it's a KomunIKON project, and
Yes.
I would like to ask you to introduce it to our listeners. Maybe briefly speak what this project means and how do you see the future of the project you are part of.
Yes. So yes, the KomunIKON project deals with is developing Econ, that is the name of a new visual language. So you can call it like a visual Esperanto or an emoji language. So the idea is to go back to the beginning of the writing systems like hieroglyphs and Chinese characters and Maya glyphs, etc. All these people tried to convey the meanings through images. Of course, there was also already some phonetic parts, but there were also some semantic writing. And of course, at the time, without computers, you had to draw, some characters, some small pictures, and so it was very long, and so that's why, and difficult to represent some abstract meanings. So that's why then the writing systems evolved more and more towards phonetic systems like alphabets. Okay. But now, with the power of technology and emojis and icons, etc., we can go back to this initial need and create meaningful icons that can represent concepts. So we have already created about 500 icons, and we have already, for example, verbal tenses, we have prepositions, personal pronouns, and many other abstract concepts that for which there are currently no icons. For example, the idea of want, the idea of um, play, or the idea. There are several. The word and, for example, or the word or. So the word some, etc. So there are some abstract concepts that can be expressed through icons in a quite understandable way. And so we are going on with this project. We have several sub teams. We have linguists, semioticians. We have graphic designers, computer scientists. We have several channels. We have a website, and then we have Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, several social media channels. So this is, in a nutshell, the project. And in YouTube, in my personal YouTube channel, and in the KomunIKON YouTube channel, you can find a playlist of about 40 videos about the history of visual languages. And in the first videos, there are also a few videos about KomunIKON, in which we present the project, and we present also, there is also a talk that I gave with André Müller at the Polyglot Gathering 2019 in Bratislava about the history of visual languages. So you can also better understand how this project has its place in the whole history of visual languages.
I had the chance to have a look on those, and I was trying to guess the meanings of the icons, and it's really funny, and it's so accurate. Sometimes it's like, to me it was hard to guess it, but when I saw the translation with the words, it was like so clear and so like easy. So I was trying to always like cover it first and then like guess what does it mean. And so I think it's a really cool thing to do. I'm just wondering, where do you see the future of the project, or do you think that people could use it instead of these emoticons one day, or what's the message
Yeah.
with the project?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, emoticons are the typographical signs. So, like colon, minus, parenthesis, for example. These are emoticons. Um, so then there are the emojis that are icons. We don't aim to replace emojis. Emojis are not a language and are not intended to be a language or to become a language for explicit declaration of the emoji consortium. We want, so the application, we are studying the application. There are several possible domains. One application that we are studying right now is the educational one. We have already published several articles. We were present at the emoji workshop. We were present at twice, by the way. We were present at the Icon Lands conference about constructed languages in the University of Torino, Italy. So we have already published some papers about the project, and the domain that we are analyzing right now is the educational domain. So how icons can improve language learning. And so there are, I would say, two main subtopics. One is for adult language learners. For example, you study German, and then word by word, you can see the iconic translation, specifically when you have to deal with, for example, with A0 people, with migrants. You don't have a common language. And so when you want to express some concepts, you can try to help yourself through icons, with our icons. And then there is a second subdomain that are children. And so children that are learning how to read their native language. Today, there are books in which you can represent easily, for example, bottle, banana, chair, door, etc. But you cannot, these books do not represent more abstract concepts like those that I have studied before, the word and, for example, the word want, etc., that are very, very common words that are learned very, very soon, but for which there are no icons, there are no standardized icons, or even there are no icons at all. And so we are creating them, and we want to create some material for children also to improve the language learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the language reading, mainly to how to read, that you have the word written and you can easily understand which is the meaning.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way how to think of learning a new language. So maybe to wrap up, do you personally think that learning new languages with the use of icons or pictures or in any interactive form is the best way how to learn new language?
I don't know if it is the best way, but for sure it is something that will improve language learning.
Okay.
And I'm not the only one to say that. In our website, you can find, we have a series of academic references. Professors that are experts in several universities about language learning, including, for example, Federico Gobbo from University of Amsterdam, including Stefano Rizzonico, University of Montreal, and many others. So it's not only my personal conviction,
Mm-hmm.
it's something that is supported also by
Yeah,
academic
I
professors.
understand. Unfortunately, I have to say that the origin time of the podcast is already reached, so I would thank you very much for such a lovely discussion. You touched so many interesting topics, so it would be so good to speak more about those. I hope also our listeners have learned something. So thank you very much for coming today. And
Thank you.
yeah, see you next time then.
Yes, bye bye. 再见. Au revoir. A presto.